I want to welcome everybody to our panel discussion today. This is the Metro Nashville Archives, and I'm Ken Feith, part of the archive staff here. We appreciate you coming today. We're going to have a great program, I think. I'll do some of the housekeeping stuff and then turn the program over to Terry, but you know about cell phones and all that, turn those off. I want to thank everybody for bringing the things that they brought. The museums around here, the collectors, y'all are great about that kind of stuff. And it really helps the archive showcase some of the things we have. And the things you bring that we highlight, it's just great for us. And this is a wonderful community, and I really appreciate all the things that y'all have done. The staff here, Linda Center, she's put a lot of this display up and coordinated it and arranged it and called all of y'all and made sure you're going to be here and what's going on. So I appreciate Linda for doing that. All right. And Amanda and Debbie. Amanda Vitito is with us today, and Debbie Cox, part of the staff. They did a lot of work in supporting this, and so we couldn't really do it without them, so I really appreciate them doing that. I want to thank our panelists for coming. This is the group that's got all the answers, so if you have questions, they have answers. they have answers. Yeah, I was going to get that one. I wanted to introduce Terry. He's going to be our moderator for today, and he will introduce the panelists and tell you about them. By the way, he does have a new book out, Next Stop on Grandpa's Railroad, History and Architecture of NC and Sale Railway Depots and Terminals. And he does have a few for sale today, and he'll be glad to sign them. And so keep that in mind before you leave. Terry developed his love for railroading in Dresden, Tennessee, where he became fascinated with Grandpa's Road and the activities surrounding the local depot. He was one of the founders of the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway Preservation Society and currently serves as the Society's president. He's traveled to many archives and libraries and historical centers to document the history and architecture of the NC and St. L railway system. Graduate of Middle Tennessee State University. He's 30 years as an officer with the Metro Nashville Police Department. So as you're wandering around looking at the exhibits in here and over there today, keep your hands to yourself. We have people here. He is an authority on history and architecture of depots and terminals, and he's available for lectures and to speak. And so with that, I will turn it over to Terry, and he can take it from there.
Good morning. It's good to see so many friends. A lot of you are members with the Tennessee Central Railway Museum with us, and others I've met over the years through our connections with Railroad Love. So it's good to see old friends and new faces as well. Ken said I was going to introduce the panel, but I think I'm going to let them introduce themselves since they seem to know more about themselves than I do. And so I'll start with Alan, if you'll just tell us who you are and what your background is. And
my name's Alan Hicks, and I like trains. Enough said. Now, like I say, I've been in the Nashville area all of my life, surrounding areas and everything, and like I say, followed the railroads just as a hobby. Never really had any people in the family that worked, save for my grandfather, that worked part-time or a little bit as a section hand for the LN at one time, but that was essentially it. But I grew up in Goodlettsville. Our property backed up to the Evansville main line there north, right there in Madison at the Rivergate area, up there behind Home Depot. And like I say, I looked at trains and counted cars and went to Amqui down at Madison in that area and took pictures and just anything to do with it. Of course, building models was a part of it too, and up through the years, just pursue it. Of course, went through the whole stage of model building, cars and planes and ships and all that, but always kept back to trains. So, like I say, it's been in my life for the biggest part of it, and worked, went to work for the city of Gallatin in 1971 after I got out of the service. We moved up there and worked for them in the gas department until 1985 when I went to work for Nashville Gas Company. Recently retired from there 3 years ago in August. And so now I supposedly have, full-time effort, working with trains. Of course, some of us, we had numerous model railroad clubs around town. The latest was back in the early 80s when a group of us founded the Cumberland Valley Model Railroaders and as part of the National Model Railroad Association. And from then on, about the time that started up the old dinner train, Broadway dinner train, some of us who liked it all, models, the prototype and everything, some of us went to work for the dinner train, which I did at part-time, conductor and brakeman on the dinner train. And then along came the museum. We got a wild idea about, hitting up CSX or Southern, Norfolk Southern, about donations of equipment. That kind of got it started. And then, of course, our excursion train program, we started utilizing the Broadway dinner train equipment for that early on until we purchased, made enough money. We purchased our own equipment, and it's been ongoing ever since. About 20 years we've been running these excursion trains. The museum has grown. We acquired some property, part of the old Tennessee Central shop, maintenance, master mechanics office down at 220 Willow Street. Like I say, we own that. We have a small museum in there, a hobby shop, a meeting room, and a library inside that. And of course, it's our maintenance base for our excursion trains. So, like I say, trains have been part of my life, something I enjoy. It's a good hobby. Keeps me out of beer joints and all that stuff. So, thank you.
My name is Bill Medley, the appraisal supervisor for the comptroller of the Treasury for the state of Tennessee. I'm in charge of the inventory and all of the rail yards, and don't do the actual cars themselves, but my office keeps up with the ad valorem taxation for all of the railroads that are involved in the state of Tennessee. My grandfather was a carman for the old Sparta branch that used to run from Sparta all the way down to Chattanooga area, and heard many great stories sitting on his knee when I was very young, and just absolutely fell in love with railroads. And I was lucky enough in 1996 to get the job that I have now, which allows me to keep up with what is the evolution or the involvement of the railroads since 1996. And obviously I had to know a little history prior to that. And I'm currently now the Transportation Committee Chair for this region for the International Right-of-Way Association. I'm also involved with the Rails to Trails and Rails with Trails program with Ms. Paula Shaw in Department of Transportation, in which all of the railroads that are currently that you know of that have gone out of business and got abandoned are being looked at as a possible Rails to Trails. And I guess you know, if you've kept up with it at all, that it's a big program. It's something that has gone on and ever so. Again, I am a lucky human being, and I love railroads.
Well, I think I'll keep the same theme. I'm Paul Ballard. I'm CEO of the Metro Transit Authority and the Regional Transportation Authority, and I also like trains. I've been fortunate in that I've worked my whole career earning a living working with trains and buses and everything to do with transportation. I started in transportation as a brakeman on the railroad many years ago back when we still had cabooses and we walked the tops of the cars. That, of course, isn't permitted anymore. It was quite exciting at the time. But I've started on the Boston to Maine Railroad. I worked in passenger service as well as over the road, and worked in yard service, did odds and ends. I was a flagger, I was a skateman, and did all the jobs that you learn on the railroad, and have kept that interest and love of the railroads throughout my entire career. I helped start the light rail line in St. Louis, and now I'm fortunate to work with the Music City Star, which is a great commuter rail project that started 3.5 years ago. I brought along with me some slides today because I think railroads are great photographic subjects, and I just wanted to be able to share some of the pictures. I have some historical pictures as well as some current day pictures, and we'll do a little comparing and contrasting. So look forward to speaking to you in a few minutes.
And I'm Terry Goes. As Ken alluded, I worked for the police department for 30 years. I did not work for the railroad. One thing that I wrote in my book is when I was a few years younger, I would hand out my first business card had NC and St. L Railway written on it, and I'd hand it to somebody and they said, "Oh, did you work for the railroad?" And I went, "No, it went out of business when I was 7 in 1957." So, but kind of as Alan said, I didn't work for the railroad, but I did. I lived close to a depot in Dresden, Tennessee, and every time a train would pass, I was perked up and running down. Mother spanked me one time for running after a train that was leaving town. She said, "You need to stay off that railroad track." And there was an old man that was a station master there in Dresden named Sam Butts, and I guess I just worried the absolute snot out of him, because every day I'd be down there doing something and hanging around the depot that was literally about 400 or 500 yards from my house. And I'd stand on his desk, and I'm sure all of you know what a semaphore signal is. Well, it had a cable that came into the office and had two big handles on it that you pulled like this, and if you pull one down, the other one went up, and that changed the semaphore outside. And so I'd stand on his desk. I wasn't big enough to do it from the floor, so I'd stand on his desk and hang on to those semaphore lines and pull those things up and down. But Mr. Sam was awfully wonderful to me and got me interested in NC and St. L. And I remember the yellow and maroon boxcars and the blue and gray engines that would come through. One Sunday afternoon, I was down on the depot dock just hanging around, and one of the local crews had come in to switch there in Dresden, and the guy looked down and said, "Boy, you want to drive this train?" And I went, "Yeah." So I climbed up and drove an F3 NC and St. L blue and gray engine for about 50 yards. That was my driving experience. But as all of us are, and I'm sure not only just the men on the panel, but every one of you all, you've got some love of railroading, or you wouldn't be here this morning. And so that's why we've all gathered. This is going to just be a real loose fit panel discussion this morning, but just to rein it in a little bit, we're going to talk about between the four of us, we've got enough experience to talk about the railroads coming to Tennessee, and then we're going to go from the first trains to come to Tennessee, and then we're going to wind up on it basically as we're sitting on the other end of the panel, and we'll talk about where we are today and maybe where we'll be in the future. And this is going to be just open discussion for questions from the audience, and there are, W.O. Green is here, and he's a member of TARP that talks about their organization is to get passenger service back into the state of Tennessee. So maybe, if you've got some interest there, we'll just, not only will we bring things off the panel, but maybe out of the audience as well. So let me start it. NC and St. L was the oldest train company to charter in this state. So let me start just by the history by talking about the NC and St. L coming to Tennessee and what Tennessee was like just before railroads came, and then we'll just kind of progress on up and talk about things all the way through the Music City Star and where we might be going with railroading, and Bill will talk about where railroadings are in general, and then Puck can talk about maybe passenger service and so on and so forth. So we'll just go from there. You've got to imagine that Tennessee was a very agrarian society in the late 1700s and early 1800s, and if a man wanted to bring, let's just say if he were up on, say, the Cumberland Plateau or somewhere like that, and he was a small farmer, he would raise everything that he needed for his subsistence on his own property, and what he didn't grow himself in the line of the leather for his shoes, or the tobacco, or the cotton for his clothes, or the flax to make his linen, he might trade with his next door neighbor, and then maybe the two of them might trade with some people across the valley, and there might be a general store. But basically in the early 1800s, we're an agrarian society, and we're not getting much out of our own community. The only way, if I did make something on my farm that I needed to trade farther afield from my community, the only way I'm going to get, let's say, from my materials from the Cumberland Plateau into Nashville is maybe I would put it on a flatboat and flat it down one of the, like Caney Fork River or one of the other tributaries that leads into the larger rivers, and then eventually we might get it up here up the Cumberland to Nashville. If we're going to take it further afield from that, then we would have to take it up the Cumberland River, my material up the Cumberland River to Paducah, up to the Ohio River in Paducah, and then all the way over to the Mississippi. And then we're going to trade all of our material here in Middle Tennessee down all the way to New Orleans. But New Orleans is going to be the place that our materials that we raise or grow or manufacture here in Middle Tennessee is going to go down to New Orleans. We don't have, it's too much of an arduous trip to take it over the mountains and then to South Carolina and to the East Coast over there. So most of our trading is going to be done down the Mississippi River to New Orleans. What's going to happen is that Tennessee wants to build its infrastructure, and so in the late around 1830, they're going to send out a message to businessmen that if you will build a railroad, we will put up 30% against your 66% to get you started as a company. Then they didn't have many takers at that point, so the state sweetened the pot to 50%, and then they had a few people that started up. So around 1840, late 1830s to early 40s, we had a few railroad companies popping up around the state. East Tennessee would have been a lot more interested in getting railroads than would Middle or West Tennessee, in that East Tennessee was up in the mountains, and if they wanted to get materials down, they would have had to put it on the Tennessee River, float it all the way past Muscle Shoals, which was always a nightmare because the shoals were always running low, and it was hard to get material past there. But if you're familiar with where the Tennessee River runs, it goes all the way down into Alabama, comes across, comes back up, and goes up up around Camden, where Camden, Tennessee is now, and then they would have had to make the trip meeting on into the Cumberland and taking it down to New Orleans. So although we started this state, the first settlers to come to the state of Tennessee were in East Tennessee. They were at a geographic disadvantage to get their materials to market over the Middle Tennessee, which had all the rivers, and West Tennessee, which was yet relatively flat, had better roads, and had the Mississippi River if it's left side. But so East Tennessee was wanting to get railroads more than the other two sections. So the other two sections kind of held back on the progression of trying to get railroads in the state. If I were, again, going back to the farmer, if I were a farmer, might take me, if I probably couldn't get my materials to market because the water was lower and the winter it was frozen, or if I had to take my materials over land, it might take me 3 weeks to go from say, the upper plateau to Nashville and back. So the people in the state of Tennessee are going to welcome the railroads coming into the state and as another viable piece of transportation. So that's how we're going to get started. I mentioned that all the materials are going to have to go to New Orleans to get sold or to get transported to Europe. The people on the East Coast in Charleston, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, are clamoring to get to be in competition with New Orleans to get that trade. So in the early 1830s, they're going to start building railroads in South Carolina, push them across the state to Georgia. Georgia's going to pick up the mantle there, build railroads across the state of Georgia, and then they're going to build from, say, the South Carolina border to a place called Terminus, a place that you probably will know better as Atlanta, Georgia. So they're going to build, the Georgia Railroad's going to build to Atlanta. The Western Atlantic Railroad's going to build from Atlanta up to a place called Ross's Landing, someplace that you might know better as Chattanooga. And when Georgia, when the companies in Georgia get the railroads to Ross's Landing or Chattanooga, that's going to whet the interest of people in Tennessee to get a railroad from Nashville to Chattanooga. And so now you see if we've got a railroad chain all the way from Nashville to Chattanooga and from Chattanooga to Atlanta and from Atlanta to the East Coast, now Savannah, Georgia and Charleston, South Carolina are going to be in direct competition with New Orleans to have that business. So this is the way railroading is going to get started in the state of Tennessee. The first company to charter and actually get trains running would be the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad. Vernon Stevenson, who was a local Nashville businessman, is going to literally go from door to door knocking and raising money. He'll raise $500,000 here. He'll go to Charleston, South Carolina, and raise another $500,000 there. You can see the interest that Charleston would have in having a railroad built in Middle Tennessee because of what I just talked about. So he's going to raise about $1 million between those two cities, and then he's going to get some more money from Murfreesboro and Shelbyville and some other small towns. And eventually they will charter the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad about 1845. We're going to build the railroad from Nashville to Chattanooga, get it finished in 1854. And at that point, we've got a link from Nashville all the way to the East Coast. So that's how railroads are going to get started in the state. Eventually, L&N is going to come into Nashville in 1856, and then there's going to be a development of the Tennessee Central after it first starts out as Nashville and Knoxville Railroad, and then we'll go on and these railroads will all merge together, eventually going into CSX that they are today. So,
Which one?
go to it.
I was told I had to do something on the L&N. I wasn't quite prepared for that, but of course, like I said, Terry said, the L&N got into Nashville, completed the line here in the 1850s. So, like I say, from then on, L&N expanded south through other acquisitions, the Nashville and Decatur Railroad, I don't know what all, Tennessee Coal and Iron on into Birmingham, and then expanded, just a major system. Like I say, I'm not really prepared, to go into that. Others out here, if you've got to go, I know Steve and, some of the others of you that are L&N, pitch in some dates and other acquisitions there, and, we can kind of carry the L&N, but the main stem from Louisville to Nashville, like I say, hit Nashville 1856, 1859, somewhere along in there. But and from then on, of course, in Nashville, the L&N was a growing force here in this area, and as it expanded and so forth, I don't even in later years, when it and ACL, I guess it was, acquired the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis in later years for control over it, although it was still operated as an independent railroad. The NC, continued to prosper as did the L&N. Like I say, anybody else that has anything on L&N wants to kick it in. Primarily what I have is on the Tennessee Central. Of course, Tennessee Central was kind of a latecomer into the area. It was actually begun in 1884. A man named Alexander Crawford, who was from Pennsylvania, an iron baron from that area, kind of rich man, was busy in mining and steel operations, timber and so forth. And he saw the area of Middle Tennessee as a place for raw materials, particularly coal and everything that was available in the Monterey area up in the eastern part of Tennessee. So in 1884, he came here and began construction on the Nashville and Knoxville Railroad. He was going to build from Lebanon to the Monterey area. Lebanon already had a railroad at that time, a branch of the NC, the old Texas and Pacific, that it was built from Nashville by the NC and St. L. And so, like I say, they were going to build eastward from Lebanon on up through Gordonsville, Cookville, like I say, into the Monterey area, and then branches out of there back into the coal fields where there were numerous mines and so forth. But generally people look at Jerry Baxter as being the main man connected with the Tennessee Central, which he was in later years, but Alexander Crawford was the actual founder by starting the N&K. He died in 1890, but his sons continued with the building process, and the branch, he made it to Cookville by 1890, and then also completed the branch up to Hanging Limb, which is north out of Monterey, in 1984. So, like I say, he was in the coal fields, but in 1893, they were interested in reaching further, reaching the Cincinnati, New Orleans, and Texas Pacific Railroad, which is on over around the Rockwood, Harriman, Emory Gap area, and they were looking at extending the track on that way. But in the meantime, the panic of 1893 kind of set everything back. Fortunes were lost, and Jerry Baxter had come into the picture. He himself lost part of his fortune during the panic, but he was able to continue using certificates, receiver certificates, to fund the construction, and in 1900 the line was completed on from Crossville to Emory Gap. So Baxter continued on. He wanted to get into Nashville. Of course, he had a parallel route there that with the T&P in existence as part of the Nashville and Chattanooga and St. Louis, but actually, they went ahead and built a parallel line into Nashville. The Tennessee Central was seen as kind of a stepchild, I guess you'd say, by the NC and the L&N, and they really didn't want it around. So, and Baxter was kind of thorn in many sides from words that were written about him and so forth. But like I say, he was persistent and also expanded. And after he got to Nashville in 1901, he obtained a charter for building on westward toward Clarksville, and with that formed the Nashville and Clarksville Railroad, and built on into that area. He resigned as president of the TC, in May of 1903, and he remained on the board of directors and was succeeded by N.C. Chapman as the president of the road. On 1903, the first train ran on the Western Division from Nashville to Ashland City, and in 1904 was completed all the way to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which remained its western terminus even to the end. He died in 1904, and with continuing financial problems, in 1912, the railroad was placed in the hands of receivers, was operated by both Southern and Illinois Central, and in 1922, a purchasing syndicate bought the railroad and changed the name to the Tennessee Central Railway Company, and this was a name that it maintained until the end in 1968. With that, like I say, the railroad was essentially complete, and struggled on, had good years, bad years. The primary downfall, I guess, was in the early 1950s. They were banking on TVA opening up the new steam plant in Kingston. They were banking on TVA buying all the coal and transporting it to them over the TC from the coal mines on the Davison branch, Crawford branch, out of hanging limb area there north of Monterey. They borrowed some $5 million from the government's Reconstruction Finance Corporation, supposedly for equipment to upgrade tracks and so forth. But as time progressed, TVA changed its buying methods. The coal traffic never reached what they anticipated. The revenues the same, and TC kind of stayed on hard times until the 60s when, like I say, things got worse. Traffic declined, and in 1968, August 31st of 1968, it was sold, went bankrupt, and was divided up between the IC, the L&N, and the Illinois Central. And some portions of it still active today. Of course, we in the Tennessee Central Railway Museum operate over portions of it, thank goodness. Just last year started operations on another 19 miles, the line to Monterey, which was reopened. Part of the old branch was rebuilt. L&N took it up in '69 after they bought that part of the railroad, and the coal branch out of Monterey was abandoned. But like I say, they built the Nashville Easterns built another 3 miles of new track up there, and reopened that line, has welded rail, and we're now running excursions up there a couple of times a year. So, like I say, TC still lives. Portions of it are gone, and but a lot of it is still around. So, I guess that would pretty well cover the TC part of it. So,
Well, can we pick up here about where we are on the TC using the Music City Star, and then we'll go back to...
Well, sure. I'll take this. I think I'll come up here if
That's
I
fine.
can. It'll help me to see the slides a little bit. Good morning once again, and I'd like to start by thanking Ken Feith and the Metro Archives for establishing the wonderful collections they have here, and thank Metro government. I've been working with Ken for the last few years as we identify archival material at MTA, and we've turned all of that over to him, and he has really put together a nice display of transit memorabilia and really important photographs and collections from over the years. Those of us in transportation don't always respect the historical aspects. I've always tried to, but he's been very good to work with, and we've given him really, anytime we discover anything of historical significance, we turn it over to Metro Archives, and they take charge of it and preserve it for future generations. I'd also like to just introduce a few folks from MTA who are here today. Ray Alegria is from our IT department, and he's the one who's helping me set this up and making the slideshow. Gary Hobbs is with our as a parts technician. There he's right here. And Kathy Owen is my assistant, and she's here today with her husband Jim, who's a huge rail fan. And also my wife Susan is in the back row today, and while she's not a rail fan, she did let me one time buy a home adjacent to the Monon main line in northwest Indiana, and we lived there for 4 years, and so I am indebted forever to her for those years. Our two sons were young, and they enjoyed the trains, and a cute story, we were looking at homes. I was working in Chicago at the time, and this is a suburb, and we were with the real estate agent showing us this home, and this real estate agent did not realize that when she showed us this home, the railroad actually enhanced the property from my perspective. So she proceeded to explain to my wife and me that, well, yeah, there's a track out there, but there's only one little train goes by about noontime every day. Well, of course, my wife breaks out laughing because she knows that I know precisely what the trains are on that particular line. I know what the Amtrak schedule is, the Cardinal and the Hoosier, and I knew the tonnage on the line, and so she thought that was quite humorous, and the real estate agent never did figure out that she actually improved her ability to sell the property, which she did. We had a great time, and it was a great home. But what I wanted to do today is talk a little bit about the present of railroads in Nashville, and specifically the Music City Star, and where we might be going in the future for commuter rail in Nashville and in Middle Tennessee. And there really is a lot going on right now. I hope everybody can see this, but what I'm starting with is a Regional Transportation Authority's current services, and is this going to, there it is. This, of course, is the Music City Star going to Lebanon, but we also have other regional services that are operated by the RTA. This service here up to Sumner County to Gallatin, Hendersonville. We have the service down to Rutherford County, Murfreesboro, Laverne, and Smyrna that has been operated by MTA with commuter buses for a number of years. And then late last year we started this service down into Franklin, Spring Hill. It's contracted to the Gray Line Corporation. They run some very 45-foot over-the-road coaches, televisions, restroom equipped. So we're really building, I think, a nice regional network in Middle Tennessee. And then this last line here is a line that we're working on putting the funding together to now up to Springfield, and working with Mayor Howard Bradley up in that area. I want to start with some slides. We started service on the Music City Star commuter rail in September of 2006, so we've been in service now for about 3.5 years. There's some shots of the downtown station and some shots of our equipment. And for those of you who don't know the line, it runs about 31 miles from downtown with stops in Donaldson, Hermitage, Mount Juliet, Martha, and Lebanon. And you won't be able to read that, but that is the Music City Star schedule. Essentially, we run 3 round trips in the morning and 3 round trips in the evening. And then on Fridays, we have a fourth, well, in the East Coast, they call it a theater train, but it's might not be late enough really to be officially called a theater train, but we do have a late night Friday train. And then the fares, we have, for the regular riders, we have discounts. You can buy a monthly pass. And if you just walk up to the station and buy a ticket, it's $5, except at Donaldson, where it's only $1.60 because we match that fare there with the bus. We do a lot of special events. These are actually real passengers on the trains to the Titans games, and they came in, they put their face paint on, and we took pictures, and we've used them as we do our promotions for the Titans trains. And we'll be running the Titans trains again this year. We do all the home season regular games, so there'll be 8 games. Other special events. This is July 4th. We just went on sale for the July 4th tickets this year. We had a very successful train last year. We decided to just print enough tickets that we had seats. That really worked very well. For those of you who know the history on that one, I was not in charge of the prior year, so I won't take credit for that or discredit. But last year we sold out the train several days before the 4th. We work very closely with the Tennessee Central. A lot of, they provide car hosts for us, and it's a very positive experience, except last year we had a terrible downpour during the fireworks. So the weather did not cooperate, but the train ran smoothly and on time. The late Friday night service, we're actually about to make a change on that. Starting a week from next Friday on July 2nd, we're going to run that train later at night to give people an opportunity to do more things downtown. So the train will then will start departing at 10:30 p.m. So you can actually go downtown, maybe do some of the theater events, have dinner or whatever, and come back. So we're going to be doing that starting July 2nd. And just some general thoughts on ridership. Ridership has been building. I have a chart, and what that's showing is that particular chart. Let me just make sure I get my references right here. This is from April of 2009 to April of 2010. You can see it's a little bit all over the place, but we've made some changes in fare structure to try to attract more people. We included the state government's Easy Ride program on the train. So we got a lot of state workers, and the state basically pays us a lump sum, and then state workers can show a smart card and ride that just like they do on the MTA buses. Metro government is also supporting their employees riding the train from the Davidson County stations. Interior shots, if you haven't been on the train, these cars came from Chicago, the Metro commuter rail system up there, and they were in wonderful shape. They were rebuilt by Metro in 1999-2000. We bought the cars in late 2005, so they had a major overhaul and reconditioning. We're only 5 years old, so the cars came in, and there were still Chicago Tribunes on the seat from 2 weeks prior to when the cars arrived in Nashville. So they were not out of service. When you take equipment out of service, it deteriorates over time. These cars were in service until they were shipped to Nashville. So they've worked out very, very well. You can see some interior shots. They're bi-level cars. This is how we handle folks in wheelchairs. There's a mini-high platform. It's real simple. It's aluminum construction. Bridge plate works very, very well. No mechanics. Some of the stations now, those of you who are familiar with the Tennessee Central, what we tried to do at the time, and I've been involved in the project for many, many years. For several years I was on the RTA Board of Directors, and I represented Governor Bredesen, and I chaired the construction committee overseeing the construction of the Music City Star. So I had a good history when on December 1, 2008, I became the CEO of the RTA as well. But we went back when we were in the construction phase and we looked at some of the historical stations and tried to replicate the best we could what the old Tennessee Central stations might actually look like. So this is right at Riverfront Station. People think it's a historic building. It's not. It was built as part of the Music City Star. I do have some shots I'm going to show you of historical buildings and locomotives. And this is kind of the fun part. This goes back to 1952, Riverfront Station with a steam locomotive and passenger train. There's 1929 also at Riverfront Station with, I assume, a much older steam locomotive and a passenger train. And some additional shots, First Avenue. Riverfront was a for those of you who know the history, was a great railroad and riverboat transportation hub. There was lots and lots of activities. And then this is a shot which it's kind of eerie because we were hit real hard with the floods recently. This is flood down on First Avenue back, and I don't have a date on that, but the floods this time around on May 1st and 2nd hit MTA in particular very hard. Our building on the Cumberland River had 5 feet of water, so we had a lot of damage. Yeah, is that what that is? Okay. But we were hit hard. The Music City Star did pretty well. We had a washout in Lebanon, but that was put back into service within 3 or 4 days. Our Nashville and Eastern Railroad operators are super operators, and they put that right back into service. Hidden shots of our Hermitage and Donaldson suburban stations, typical suburban stations, a big parking lot, about 200 cars each, and then basically some glorified shelters that are not unlike what you'd find on our Gallatin Road bus rapid transit line. But it works very, very well for commuter stations. Here's some fun. Here's the old Donaldson flag stop in years past. So I think things are much better today. You know, we tend to think historically, gosh, I wish I was back in those days. Well, that's all you had at Donaldson to wait for the train. It's a lot better these days. These are, this is our Mount Juliet station over in Wilson County, and that's a very, very popular station. And this is what they had in years past. So I think we've made, once again, some great progress over the years in improving the infrastructure, but great photos. And then this is our present-day Martha Station. Martha Station's had a tough time because it's in the middle of that Highway 109 construction project. So we've had to be kind of nimble. We had our first station, then we had to move it, and we used some stimulus money. We had about enough money to build half the station, so we've got about half the station built, and now we're waiting for some additional funds so we can finish it. But it's functional. Really only one car fits on the platform right now, but we'll finish that as soon as we identify some additional funds. Still better than Martha Depot in past years, so we've made a lot of progress. And then this Lebanon, which is the eastern terminus of the current Music City Star. We generate a good level of ridership out of Lebanon Station. We have folks come from some of the other counties east of Wilson County and park there and take the train. And a couple of shots. Here's the Lebanon Railway Express Agency in years past. And I guess you can see sort of Riverfront Station, modern-day Riverfront Station, a little bit in that structure. And passenger train at Lebanon Depot. And then I thought I'd close up. The Music City Star is very photographic and photogenic, and so I included a few shots. Here's the train out on the line. One of our customers took that picture on the trestle. Here's a great shot with, I guess that's not the Bat Building anymore, the AT&T building or whatever we're calling it, in the Music City Star. So that's where we're at, and I'll look forward to participating in the panel discussion wrap-up.
Thank you, Paul. Bill, you want to talk about the intermodals And just in freight transportation in the state now?
Do you mind if I sit up there?
Nah, you're welcome to the, not my podium, it belongs to them.
Anyway. By the way, I did not play in the Righteous Brothers, as I've been. Folks, what I'd like to do is kind of piggyback off Mr. Allen's conversation, if I possibly could. And what I want to talk about is the present state of railroads in the United States, and then we'll go to Tennessee. And then I'd like to talk about possibly the future, and hopefully there'll be some questions that will be arrived from this. I think what we're actually looking at today, folks, historically, as Alan has laid it all out, it took our society, an agrarian society, to move forward to help develop what we consider the areas of interest in the state of Tennessee and in the United States. Without the railroads, I don't know where we'd be right now, to tell you the truth, folks. What has caused our recent evolution has been the ability of the consumer to be able to get things on an instant notice. You don't have to order something and a month later it comes in the mail, or you have to order it and go pick it up in a month. You literally can order something in about a week or so, you can get it, and possibly within a day if you want to get it FedEx to you. What has happened on this is that we have decided as a society that we wanted our products produced at the cheapest cost so that our pocketbooks would be able to buy more product. And that consumer society which we have developed is what has caused a lot of our industries to move over for cheaper labor to the Chinas, to the southern Mexicos, and to other areas, and then that product has to be brought here. If you've looked at a railroad, I'm assuming you're railroad buffs, you would know what has changed on railroads. They don't just have an engine anymore, and they have box cars and round cars to do product and stuff. What has happened is that we literally have, through that product that we're demanding on the instant notice, have turned those into containers. Those containers are produced over in those other countries. The railroads themselves, who used to be just railroad bound, stuck to the land, are no longer that. They're actually part of the product getting to here. The product is produced in China or wherever. I'm going to use China. It's overseas. It is brought here over on a boat that is partially owned by the railroads. It is downloaded, it is brought to a port of interest, and so you'll know the new term for that is called intermodal. And you will see those containers, what they will do is they'll take the containers and these big machines, and anybody that wants anything to know about this more, I'm going to give you my email, and if you will email me, I will send you a presentation that will give you plenty of pictures and plenty of stuff that proves what I'm trying to say. So they bring these containers, and they'll double stack them now. And they're not just single stack like the old car was. It's actually part of, you have nothing but a flatbed. They pick it up, they take that container, set it on it, they mark that doggone thing, they take it to a yard. It's sorted out automatically by that barcode, and then it's distributed out to the various areas that it needs to go to. For this to happen, the railroads had to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars restructuring the old railroad yards that used to handle, like we said, the hump yard would go up there and separate the fuel that goes here, the chemical that goes there, okay. Sorry about that. You know, I think he was sitting right here with us when he got. But anyway, so what has happened is that our consumer society, as I've stated, has changed the way that railroads and their needs and wants are from the old days back that we've talked about in the pictures we've saw of strictly freight and a little bit of passenger to now. The passenger part of it has to do with what Mr. Paul was talking about, generally short line. Amtrak, I believe, is still a thing that takes you long distances, but it's freight. And the freight, again, has changed from, if it's not a tanker and it's not a boxcar that's carrying something, it's one of these containers. Well, in order for that to happen, that restructuring happened to happen in Tennessee. Memphis, as you know, used to be the king of the cotton place. That's where all the cotton came down the river and everything. Well, now it's the king of the intermodal. There are 2 yards over there, the Johnston Yard and the Tennessee Yard. Johnston Yard with Norfolk Southern and BNSF doing the Tennessee Yard, that is spent in Memphis, Tennessee, somewhere in the range of about $1 billion. Restructuring those yards, getting them ready to take those containers, take them and put them on the flatbeds where the trucks could take them to their product, or take the product to the area where they're at. It has changed the entire way that freight has been moved. And the word freight is very important to this because freight is everything. But most of what we have done as a consumer, wanting this, I want a new cell phone, I lost mine. Well, I can go get one tomorrow. I mean, I know that because what happened is those products, like the old days, they would go to that city and be taken to that area right there, and there'd be a truck sitting there ready. Well, it's not done that way. It's brought to the center mobile. It's tagged, checked to make sure that it's secure, not got a bomb in it or something like that. And then instantly, it is put on a flatbed at that point, and that flatbed is on its way to go to Cookeville, to the Walmart. It's going to the wherever it might be, that product instantly. Well, if that product is not ready to go somewhere, guess where it goes? It goes to a warehouse. Any of y'all from Memphis? From that area there? Have you ever noticed down on Shelby Avenue and everything, the warehouses that are going up? Well, what happened is that product, because our consumer society demanded it, our needs needed it, we wanted to have that product real close. So what they do now is that product is in that warehouse, and that thing, it's kept in that sealed up, it's taken to the warehouse, put in there. That way that FedEx in Memphis, Tennessee, grab what it wants, pull it out. Walmart wants it instantly. It's put on a darn plane somewhere, or it's put on a vehicle. It's brought to your house and dropped off. That couldn't have happened without railroads. It could not happen without railroads. There was no way to pick up that product in a big plane like they do. There was no way they could handle it. So the need and the want for railroads has increased dramatically. The federal government saw this. In the 1940s and 50s and 60s, especially the 50s and 60s, interstates was our way to get a product from one point to the other. Railroads' needs and wants diminished dramatically. That's the reason they went in receivership. That's the reason, that's just the big reason why they went under like they did. Well, guess what happened? When we decided that we were going to, and you saw this, if you would have followed the timeline and what I'm talking about, in the late 80s and 90s, all of our factories went to Mexico. All of our factories went to China. They went to these various places because of the cheap labor that we as a consumer demanded. So the railroads were at the mercy of the consumer. They said, well, you know, we're not moving this product anymore. The TVA gives up on the coal, the whatever it might be. And a lot of our railroads in the state of Tennessee were abandoned and pulled up. They were literally. Now, so you will know this, and this is a very important part, because I have to fool with this every day as the appraisal supervisor for the comptroller, is that when a line is abandoned, whether it was purchased, if it was purchased through a charter, they do not give up the ownership. It doesn't automatically revert back. When they went and got that easement through the original charter, they got all the bundle of rights. Every one of them. Every one of them. They got it all. Plus, they had the right of reversion. The reversion was up on them. So if someone wanted to, or some railroad wanted to hold on to that, which they do, and I'm the person that inventories it and puts the dollar amount that they pay taxes on it, that they could hold on to the ownership of that abandoned railroad, whether it had tracks or not. A lot of people have it in their mind that just because they pull the tracks up, doggone, I want to go by there. I want that That was bought from my grandfather years ago, and I want it back. It doesn't work that way, folks. And I have to answer that question almost on a weekly basis from people who want to say, well, this old line's been in here, I've got a garden up in it and everything, and I want to know how I can get it. Well, you have to go buy it. You have to go buy it. Now, the problem with that lately has been that the United States of America has decided that they want to get their people healthy. And I know that's a big mouthful. The United States wants to make people happy and healthy. Well, guess what happened? Rails to trails. And I've been a very big part of that in Tennessee ever since 1996 when I took over this position. I'm on the board that makes that decision for the short lines that have been abandoned. What has happened is the federal government says, well, if we're going to give you money to go in and develop this, and they generally pay for a great part of the Rails to Trails and Rails with Trails program, we want one stipulation. We want that if you abandon a line of any kind, any size, we want it rail banked. And so now the Surface Transportation Board will allow a hearing to be on for an abandonment of a railroad, which happens very often. But it has to be rail banked for the future in order, if they ever needed that railroad again and they ever wanted to redevelop those tracks, everything that was there on the Rails to Trails instantly is dissolved and gone. And of course you have to have a needs and necessity paper that makes that work. So folks, if you're involved with any of that, and I would suggest all of you, we have developed over the last several, I say we, the different authorities, the county and city authorities, have developed these Rails to Trails program for you to go out and enjoy the old railroad right-of-way that's now a gravel or paved lot that you can ride a bike, you can walk. And I can see, I'm 59 years old, so I use it. And they are absolutely wonderful. The one, I am from Cookeville, by the way, and from the Baxter area, Mr. Jerry Baxter was named after, by the way, and the rail that he talked about that's being opened up from the Nashville Eastern, which is the old Tennessee Central, up to Monterey, Hanging Limb area, has been now reopened again because now there's a certain kind of sand up there for glass that they've got to have nowadays, and that's sit for all of my life almost up until the last few years, just dormant. Well, that demand has caused that to be opened up. Well, the Rails to Trails people have got something very unique up there started. The grant's already done. Its construction's made. It's called Rails with Trails. The old railroad is just where it always was, going up the mountain there, Monterey Mountain, up to the top of the mountain. It is a mountain. Take my word for it. I've been there, born and raised there. Now they're going to, right beside it, they're going to do just like they did the Katy Trail over in St. Louis area, Missouri, the whole state, where it's Rails with Trails. It's actually going to be a rail that's right beside the railroad. So when that thing gets open, I would suggest each and every one of you go see it and get going on it, because I can tell you want to take some good pictures, there's no better pictures. There's no better pictures. And again, if you'll email me when I get through with this, I promise you I've got a PowerPoint slide of everything that I've got told you about that will help you understand where we are moving forward. I want to go back to one point, and then I'm going to finish up fairly quick, Miss Linda, if it's okay. I could talk for hours about this, folks. This is what I do for a living, so this is where we're at. I want you to understand something that's very important, and I guess you've seen the commercials. I watch NPT quite a bit, and they're a big sponsor of NPT, the BNSF Road and the SX, and you've seen the commercials during the Super Bowl and everything about what they're coming back. They're coming back, and what the biggest thing they've got, folks, one train takes 180 big 59-foot trucks off the road. The cost is around $1.30 a mile for a truck to take that product. Okay? A train can do it for 8 cents a mile. Now, folks, what your love and passion for is making a comeback like it's never had before. I mean, I would say back in the 1900s, about 1920s, when it was really good, it's making that type of comeback. The federal government realized that they cannot make any more interstates. They cannot get the interstates any wider. They can't provide any more service to handle cars, which everybody owns one or two cars, and the trucks on the road. So what they're trying to do is the federal government has got involved in the development of the railroads for the future. And that future includes two things: low interest loans, 1 to 2%, for all of the restructuring of all the old trestles, all the other stuff, to put people back to work, first of all, as part of the stimulus package. And also the second point is that they wanted this consumer society to realize that if we want, we can't say that we want all of our factories back and still want something overnight, a new TV the next day. It doesn't match, it doesn't match. So what they're trying to do is use the railroads, the movement of product and everything within our borders to help us redevelop ourselves into bringing the industry back to America. And I guess you've seen the Made in the USA signs everywhere lately. That's what this is about, is to get us back to bringing the product back here, getting these rural towns, and I'm part of a rural town, Cookeville, and I know all the little areas, Livingston, Rickman, you name it, all through the area and all through Tennessee, that have literally went away because the railroads stopped servicing them, because they were too far from the interstate, and because our consumer society decided that we wanted something now. I want that new TV tomorrow. Jimmy got one of them flat screens, I got to have one. You know, that's what we have become, and it's nothing in there. The railroads had nothing to do with it. The railroads have seen a byproduct of that, and that byproduct is the development of the railroads back like they were. And as you know, the engines that they're developing now are about 40%? I think they're 40% more efficient as far as using the diesel fuel to move the product. So the federal government's got involved in it. The local governments have got involved in it. And I think it's just a wonderful thing. Folks, right now, I would say this: if supporting the railroads is more important now than it's probably ever been before. If you've got some way to put your voice in to your senator, your congressman, your whoever, in support of railroads and railroad development and getting those 180 trucks, just between me and you, y'all have a pretty good time when you're riding down the road and a big old truck comes by, about blows you off the road. I mean, I'm sorry, and especially if it's raining. And when they have a wreck, it scuts the whole road down. It ain't like when you hit and run and something happened, they pull off to the side. It ain't like that. So I'm not against the motor carrier companies. I am for railroads. So I'll leave you with that, Ms. Lennon.
Thank you, Bill. It looks like where I started talking about the agrarian society, we're 170 years, we're going right back to where we started from, only a much better situation. We've had our little time up here. Let's open it up to you all. If you've got questions, let's or comments or whatever.
I got a question for Bill. There's an abandoned line that comes out of Nashville to Ashland City up to Clarksville.
Yes, sir.
That was abandoned probably 20 years ago. Is that line available for future use for the RTA for a commuter line?
Let me make sure, is it the one that runs along the river to Ashland City? Okay, I can give you an update on it if that helps you at all. You know, Nashville and Western had run past the glass factory and that area there for years and more or less stopped right where they were going to do. And that had to do, believe it or not, with barges. What was coming on and off barges. Well, it ended right there in the Big Bend, right there where Highway 12 just almost touches it. Well, that has been opened back up again because of the rail, the project, the rail banking that was happening, where they just said, no, We're not going to cut this off anymore. So it now has runs as far as the Stratos, where the boat factory is, and the concrete panel place is right there, almost to Ashland City. Well, people that were smart a long, long time ago, people smarter than me by a heck of a thing, developed what they call railroad authorities. And what they did is they actually purchased the railroad from, and the rights for the railroad authorities did, from the railroads, so that they could run their own lines and have the access so that it would never be cut off, or they could take it and redevelop it. So they're as far as the industrial park now, okay? If the plans are for it to continue going on out.
Well, the line is, the rails are still in place to Ashland
Yes, sir.
City, but past Ashland City, they've been pulled up.
Well,
And I know there's some people up there around McAdore Creek that would hate to see the railroad come through their backyard again, but eventually, if we have a commuter train going to Clarksville, that's where it's got to go.
okay. The railroad authority owns that, and to answer that better, what I would do is contact the railroad authority there that's through those few little counties and ask them the question blank, what is the position? Right now, as far as I know, it ends at Ashland City, where I told you the industrial park. As far as it going any farther west, it literally has to do with demand. If you've got somebody, a Volkswagen plant, or like they did in Chattanooga that opened that up, they got 2 lines right there that were used but not used much now, are just going to be on fire. And the railroads are benefiting. Their bottom line internationally has just grown dramatically, because now they actually are part owners in the boat companies that bring those containers over here. Okay.
Do any of you foresee passenger travel through Nashville anytime in the foreseeable future? Right now, if I want to go anywhere major, I have to go to Memphis and then north or south. If I want to go anywhere on major rail.
Amtrak type thing. Okay. It comes through here, does it not?
No.
Not at all. So,
You want me to be chat?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm one of the members of the Tennessee Association of Railroad Passengers, and we've been a lobbying group for the last 20, 25 years trying to get Amtrak back into Nashville. The Obama administration has been the first administration in my lifetime that has really pushed passenger trains. And in the last few months, we have been put on the list, or on the map, I guess it would be, for a high-speed train from Chattanooga that will come from Atlanta to Chattanooga and extend on into Nashville. Now, this may happen in my lifetime, it may not. It's going to depend on funding and a lot of things. If you want passenger trains in Nashville, the best thing to do is contract now your state representatives, your congressmen, and your senators. Believe me, I have been doing that. I mean, that's what we do, is try to go to these people and as being an advocate for passenger service in Tennessee. And I'm also a member of an organization called the National Association of Railroad Passengers, which is the federal, the major lobbying group in the United States for passenger rail. And frankly, it wouldn't be an Amtrak if it wasn't for that organization. And if you want to talk to me about it, I'll be happy to talk to you about it after we get through. But yes, maybe. Bob Clement, our past congressman, was pushing this really hard. The powers that be today, we've got problems trying to fund a lot of things, so we'll see. I think it depends upon what the state will do. Other states in the South, like Virginia and North Carolina, have got trains running from major cities in those states to Charlotte to Raleigh, Durham, so forth, and it's going to take public demand.
There is a study, so you'll know where
Yeah, there are studies.
I'm part of the, with the Department of Transportation here. I'm on the committee, matter of fact, for the railroads. And there is a study being done right now to take the Interstate 24 area and not necessarily go in through the old railroads that go down that way, but actually create a side-by-side light rail service that will go from Nashville to Chattanooga, and like he said, on to other points. Then they eventually connect on there. That's going to actually be part of the interstate. So there is a study being done, but until that study gets done, I couldn't tell you what the results are going to be.
He was first.
The question I have is, it seems like to me that the increased demand of freight type services, that the railroad companies hold the keys to passenger rail in a lot of instances.
They do.
And they have no interest in passenger because their capacity on freight.
No money.
And so it appears to me that the only way to do it is, like you say, is to build new lines, and that seems to be an inefficient approach to
Well, it really depends upon the money involved. CSX has historically been anti-passenger rail. But the big corporations, like, we've got two large railroads in the east, Norfolk Southern and CSX. They are basically partnering with Amtrak on a lot of these routes. And right now, with freight traffic down, it's been down about 20%. They love Amtrak because that's money in the bank every month where they run a train. So it's yes and no. It's going to have infrastructure is going to have to be built on these existing freight railroad right-of-ways in order to handle them.
Isn't that where passenger rail once was?
But you're looking at, I mean, between here and in Chattanooga, they run 30 trains a day. And down in Georgia, from Cartersville, Georgia, they run 45 to 50 trains a day on a single track railroad. So what it's going to take is a combination of public and private money and the demand. And that's happening in a lot of places. It's happening in California. California's got a huge infrastructure with Union Pacific and they're running, their state trains, and Amtrak runs those for them. So it is happening in other places. It can happen in Tennessee.
We only have 6 million people live in Tennessee. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Right.
Compared to hundreds, I don't know.
You've got 6 million people living in the Los Angeles Valley area.
Yeah.
But it seems like to me that, like North Carolina, for instance, they've taken a regional approach to their passenger rail deal. This week, I think the mayor met with, 11 mayors around Davidson County.
Light rail is mostly what you're talking about, though, for that. Light rail,
Right.
which is a whole different thing, and we are looking at light rail in Nashville, matter of fact. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, it is.
Are y'all going to be part of that?
Yes. I think when we talk about getting access to the National Rail Network, we have to keep in mind that these railroads, such as CSX and Norfolk Southern, have built and maintained those railroads as private property, and we have to respect that.
That's correct.
But I think that where it makes business sense for them and where they're willing to work with local government, I mean, you have commuter rail lines that are working well all across the country. Some of those are in public ownership, and some of those are on privately owned railroad lines. When I was in St. Louis and we started the light rail line, we worked very well with Norfolk Southern. They made their line available to us. I think here in Nashville, as we look at potential future commuter rail lines, we will have to bring a significant number of dollars to the table to get CSX willing to work with us. But I think that's one of the reasons why there's the Mayor's Caucus, and then now a Middle Tennessee Mayor's Caucus, and now there's a Transit Alliance of business leaders in the 10 counties of Middle Tennessee, looking at opportunities and options for developing dedicated funding for public transportation, because ultimately that's what is going to control how we develop and how we grow public transportation in Middle Tennessee, whether it's intercity rail or local rail, light rail, whatever. There's got to be dedicated funding locally. We can attract significant federal dollars. I mean, and there are significant federal transportation dollars available, but there has to be a local match on the construction, and then even more important than that, there has to be a local funding mechanism to pay the ongoing operating costs of those whatever it is you build. And so that's what the elected officials of Middle Tennessee and a number of business leaders in Middle Tennessee are working on right now, is how do you do that and where do you get the funds? And I think we're going to see some significant growth and development in that area, and I think you'll see some activities. Mayor Dean in Nashville is a super supporter. He helped establish the Mayor's Caucus and the establishment of the Transit Alliance, so I think you'll see a lot in the news in the next few months on that.
Christian back.
Well, I actually want to comment on something you said. Well, I have a chance really quick. I want to brag on someone who's a rail enthusiast and a lifelong rail employee. My grandfather started working on the railroad in New Jersey in 1948, the Erie Railroad, went through the Erie Lackawanna, did Conrail, and now works for New Jersey Transit. He's been a dispatcher and chief dispatcher for 62 years, and he is, as far as I know, the oldest dispatcher in the world, and the longest serving rail employee in the country. And he's just going strong. He does three things. He works on trains, he talks about trains, and he sleeps. That's what he does. And so I just want to brag. His name's Frank Buckstaver. He's a great guy, but I just want to brag on him real quick. But I had a question. Did the state not recently pass a law that allows the local governments to create dedicated funding sources? And what's the mechanism of that?
Yes, that was an effort that passed about a year ago in the state legislature, and it allows local governments to come together, as you said, and to form regional transportation authorities, and then to establish dedicated funding to support public transportation. And that's really what's behind the establishment of the Middle Tennessee Mayor's Caucus, as well as the Transit Alliance of the business leaders. They're having regular meetings and trying to decide how best to and also which local governments are going to participate, because I think you're going to see some competition in Middle Tennessee for who gets the next rail line. You know, we did the Music City Star initial leg to Wilson County because A, the railroad was in public ownership, the Nashville and Eastern Railroad Authority, a good partner to work with, and B, we could do it relatively inexpensively. That whole line was built with car acquisitions and everything for about $40 million, which is about the cost of a train station in California. So, I mean, we really did it inexpensively. But I think what you'll see now is, when we were talking about the line to Clarksville through Ashland City, there was a large delegation about a year ago of mayors and elected officials all up and down the line, even into Southern Kentucky, came down to Nashville, had a meeting with Mayor Dean to talk about their interest in reestablishing the service, because the commuters from Clarksville are tremendous, is a tremendous number. You've also got elected officials up in Sumner County, up that way, Gallup and Hendersonville, who are great supporters. So I think there's going to be a competition. I think we will see that more of these smaller RTAs come together, identifying their funding, because whoever does that first, whichever set of governments does that first, that's where you'll see the next transportation investment in Middle Tennessee, in my opinion. So yeah, that's a great question, and you're right on.
Can I make a comment? I work for the state of Tennessee, and prior to them paying for my train trip every day, I paid that out of my pocket. And I can say that at the first year or so, I thought, well, you know, this is not like I'm saving 40 or 50 minutes of my day on the way up there and 40 minutes on the way back. So I'm saving time, so this will pay for it, you know, and I'm getting some, and I'm big tree hugger and all that other But I can say, because of his service at the Music City Star, that I'm saving somewhere around $300 a month by taking that train in, and it's a 20-minute in, 20-minute out. I get to lay in bed about an extra 40 minutes if I want to. There's something good about what they're trying to do with the Music City Star, and if it gets to that point where we can all enjoy it, I would say all of us need to go give this a shot. How many people have been on the Music City Star? Look at you. Did you have a good time? Yeah. It's cool, isn't it? That's cool. Like my grandson said here last week, Pop, this is cool. You know, and he's going to be sold for life on this. We've got to start in your generation. I'm too old now to have children, take my word for it. But your generation of your kids, there's where you can instill this. Trains are good. Trains are not. They're all, it's like we said, hey, this is cool. And it's just something about that makes you feel good as a person. Plus, I like that extra couple $100 I'm sticking in my pocket. And my old truck that's got 300,000 miles on it is going to last another 5 or 10 years because of what their efforts are. So grassroots, start with your grandchildren and their children. Start with them talking about it and talking about saving and how this rail system helps them. You know, they can get their Xbox tomorrow if they want to, instead of having to wait a week or two. You know.
I think the best thing I can say for commuter trains in particular and public transit in general is that I ride the bus to work every day. The train's not an option for me, but I ride two buses. It takes me a little longer than it would driving, but I read a book on the way, and I avoid the road rage and the stress of the traffic, and I'm so much more relaxed when I get to work. And I think that's other than the money saved, and I ride the bus for free because I work at Vanderbilt. But other than the money saved, that's absolutely the best part of it.
There you go.
Was there a question here?
I just wanted to go back in history a little bit. I didn't work for the railroad. I worked for the railway mail service, and I run on every train out of Nashville. But what disturbed me, I run more on the Tennessee Central. And I never could understand why the Tennessee Central couldn't go past Harriman. It didn't go on to Knoxville. We've never had any passenger service to Knoxville.
There's a connector.
Well, one time there was a connecting service there at Harriman, Harriman and Northeastern,
yes, sir.
Which was a southern subsidiary out of Knoxville there, so.
Well, this was back in the early 50s, and at that time, I know that we always went to Harriman, spent the night, turned around and come back.
Right.
But the mail that we had going to Knoxville, we sent, before we got to Harriman, we transferred it to another train.
There was a guy on that train, just like you, that intercepted into Knoxville. That's where the terminus was, wasn't it?
Right.
That's where the terminus was. It
They
ended.
gave up passenger service in 1955 on that end of the line, so. Like I say, evidently, ridership was down, and so it was just a burden, and it wasn't really much of a train left there, but, at what point, like I say, the mail and all that ended, I mean, I'm not sure, but like I say, they did interchange there at Harriman with the H&N-E, Harriman and Northeastern, which, was the southern subsidiary that, had the line on into Knoxville, and
Clinch,
That's where they clinch.
that's where they transferred the passengers, but I understood they went down towards Chattanooga.
well, you had,
Several lines.
yeah, you had the north-south line, which was the CNO and TP, which was also southern subsidiary at that time, and then the line, going to Knoxville. So you had north-south out of the Harriman and Emory Gap area. Those two small towns are, right there together. So, like I say, you had connections with both lines there. But, the terminus was there at Harriman for the passenger train.
I was thinking back in the 40s, you could get on a Pullman and here and go all the way to New York.
Right.
That way,
Right.
put him on the back of the turnaround special in the Tennessee.
Right.
We did have
interchange there. But Pullman's, like you said.
They took that night train off on about 46.
Yeah.
49.
Remember this, folks, is that when you're talking railroads themselves, they're not best friends. They treat each other just like Walmart would treat Big K or Kmart or whatever. I'm telling you, because I deal with them every day. And one won't know what the other one does and don't care. Straight out, I'm sorry, but that's the bottom line on it. And BNSF Railroad, they know that as far as they can go is to Memphis. But they'd love to come on up to Nashville. They'd love to come on up and service these areas here. But those railroads say, not Norfolk Southern, as far as you go, you don't come in Norfolk Southern, and the CSX, portions of CSX are the only ones that service this area from Memphis. And so, they don't talk. That's the best way to
We've
put
always
it.
been at odds with each other. I mean, the NNC was about to take over the biggest railroad in the South, and L&N went up to New York and bought the controlling stock.
Warren Buffett doesn't give a spin about what I think about railroads.
That's right.
He spent $44 billion. He committed it last November by BNSF.
That's correct.
And the transaction was complete in March, I believe. It was February,
Yes, sir.
March. And in the same article, the truck traffic, the truck gross weight is going from 80,000 pounds to 100. Now, that scares me to death because my wife and kids are out on this road with this 80,000 pound missiles that's about to go to 100,000 pounds. George Jackson, I think some of y'all know him, retired CSX driver, and he said that the average speed of the trains across the nation is 19 miles an hour because they just about reached saturation. I'm not sure what else going on here. I appreciate y'all's input on this because I love trains, but Warren Buffett, he doesn't care.
I can tell you the story about that right quick, if you've got a minute. Mr. Buffett's also into natural gas, and he's also into wind energy. So he foresaw where they were making the product, the big windmills, and how are they getting to the location that they can be utilized. And he said, well, I already own 20% of this railroad, and I always wanted to own a railroad, so he buys one. To get back to your point about the increased weight, I also, as part of my job, take care of all the electric companies, phone companies, but also do all of the major motor carrier companies. They are being reduced in size, including the one in Cookville, Everett, and Yellow, and all the big ones that you know, probably about 50%, because they've lost 50% of their business to the railroads. There is no such thing as a long haul on a truck anymore. Oh, I'll pick it up in Nashville. I'm going to take it and go out to California, drop off that product, and come back and pick a few things. Them days is over. That container that I was telling you about, the big giant container, that's the reason the increase, because each one of them can carry about 50,000, and they put one on top of each other, which also is another product that has to be changed, which is the way that roads are built. They're not at the, clearance. What was the joke about clearance being 13 foot high? Clearance 13 feet high. Well, now they're having to be a little bit higher to handle the double ones. There's only so many of those routes from California to here that will allow you a double stacker. So that's why you're seeing the reduction, the increase in the railroads, but the reduction in the motor carrier, the way that they bring product. That's the way I'd say it.
With that, there's still a huge amount of traffic on the truck, on the highways. The percentage of truck at night is approaching 50 to 60%.
Yeah.
And if you look at the truck volumes in the areas where there's no urban areas, just in general, it's somewhere around 10 to 20 to 25% truck, which is a huge proportion of truck volume. So what that means is not necessarily the long distance is going through there, but it's going to the railroads and then it's getting on a truck and going out regionally.
We live in Nashville, folks. Is that the best way to put it, Paul? We live in Nashville. I mean, that's where we're at right here. Did you know how many interstates, 3 major interstates come here that are east to west, north to south, New Orleans to Huron, the whole 10 yards? That's why you're seeing more of it. But in reality, the companies themselves are losing their britches, the motor carriers, because of the railroads are now taking that load from them on long hauls. Period. I mean, there's no other way to put it, period.
That regional distribution, after it gets off the train, is where a lot of that percentage of trucks is going out.
Isn't that a good thing?
That's a good thing. That's what I was trying to emphasize, guys. That's a good thing.
I wasn't getting that impression there.
Well, it's a good thing. From the railroad point of view and from the use of energy that's derived from that, again, $1.30 a mile for a truck that's loaded taking it, and then 8 cents. I mean, my math works that's a whole bunch of difference.
There's one thing that's bigger, though, and I think railroad people should take into consideration. I live on a 4 and 7 degree curve. It's an S curve.
Yes, sir.
It's the Cheatham-Davidson line. And these long trains and double trains began to straighten out the tracks.
Sure do.
Because they were pulling them. They used to have pushers.
Yeah.
And so they had to put in, the ballast is already 35 feet high. And so they had to put in 5,000 tons just to keep the rail bed in line. So railroad safety, we need some new roads.
The federal government, as I stated earlier, sir, is giving 1% and 2% loans, which is free money. Anyway you look at it, that's free money, to the railroads themselves, strictly for that. And because I travel in all 95 counties and I go out and see this stuff pretty often, the restructuring of all of this has just been tremendous over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, just, there's nowhere you can go that you don't see exactly what you were talking about, the rebalancing and whatever. And it has to do with safety features too. One thing I know about the railroads, buddy, they take care. And they do the best they can with what monies they got, and they will spend every dollar they do because they know that for tax purposes, it's all a tax write-off. I'm spending to get.
Well, do we have any other questions or any more comments?
I have a question. I'm wondering who might live among our group here, and thanks to all of you. I mean, it's been amazing. I've always lived around the train, and right now in Sylvan Park, I was telling Art and Roy, and there's a lovely display on there. I live equidistant between 2 local lines. The one I call the Belle Meade line that runs out to Belle Meade, crosses Nebraska Avenue in Sylvan Park, and the trestle that crosses 37th Avenue, that's a little industrial train that goes out to the end of Cockrell Bend. It's 2 different rail lines. I live like right there. So I'm wondering, is there anyone here that lives closer to 2 rail lines than me? Probably not.
We all want to, but...
I'm blessed and spoiled.
Well, I thank you for your discussion today, and I thank you for the questions. And I've been enlightened by my panel. I hope you have as well. And I guess we'll just turn this back over to the staff here. And see Paul behind.
Thank you all.
That was great. I really enjoyed that, and I appreciate y'all coming out today and Terry moderating it. And it's been a lot of fun, so I'm glad y'all came. We've got a bunch of people waiting to come in. One person this morning I forgot to mention has really supported us. This is Roy Miles. It's his train set over there, and he built the part of the train that goes with it and all the stuff over there. So the crossing's out front there. So I wanted to mention Roy and recognize him because he's helped us a lot too. All right, good job, bro.
It's fun getting to play with my train set again.
That's right.